More than 24 Arkansas educators gathered on the steps of the Capitol this morning. They're calling on the governor and other lawmakers to add teacher salaries to the agenda of the special session next month. The teachers, dressed in red for Wear Red for Ed sit and rally, marched from the Arkansas Education Association building to the Arkansas Legislative Council meeting happening today. Lawmakers met to discuss updates and vote on measures. Among those, a $5,000 bonus for educators. Lawmakers approved that, and it's been met with mixed reaction. Kimberly Crutchfield has been a teacher for 23 years and says she wants lawmakers to do more.
Why do we continue to have to fight, for teachers and support staff to get just a decent living wage, a decent living salary?
The special session is set for August 8th. Educators say if this isn't on the agenda next month, they'll continue efforts to getting lawmakers to address their concerns. In jury selection in the trial of Garland County man accused of killing a Hot Springs police officer continues today. Kayvon Ward is facing capital murder charges in the 2020 death of Brent Scrimshire. It's day 4 and we still have a crew inside the courtroom. What we know this afternoon hasn't changed since yesterday. There are still only 8 jurors that have been selected. The trial needs 16, which includes 4 alternates. We're going to have the very latest tonight at 5 and 6. Now the West Memphis 3 are getting ready to make their appeal in court. Just a month ago, a judge ruled their petition to test new DNA evidence was not within their rights. TG11's Ashley Godwin tells us their lawyer is hoping to plead their case to Arkansas's highest court.
Judge Tanya Alexander denied Damian Eccles' habeas corpus petition because she said under Arkansas law, that's only available to someone currently in state custody. Eccles' lawyer disagrees and hopes the appeals court will change course so they can run new DNA testing.
It was stated pretty clearly in that statute that that was an or.
This or is standing in the way of Eccles and the West Memphis 3 from having the right to test additional DNA evidence. It's an additional clause that says a convict is able to file a habeas petition if they allege actual innocence.
It makes sense because the or would allow anyone the opportunity, whether they were released on parole, whether they were released 20 years earlier for a crime that they didn't commit.
The crime in question, the murder of 3 West Memphis boys in 1993. But the evidence that brought this case back to life, shoelaces that may have DNA on them from the killer. So now they are appealing. Eccles' legal team has gotten transcripts from the hearing where the judge told him no, setting them up to ask a higher court to hand down a different ruling.
We're going to go to the next level, and we feel good about we feel good about our chances on appeal.
Eccles' lawyer says the process should be fairly quick. He believes they could be back in court for the appeal within 90 days. For Wake Up Central, I'm Ashley Godwin.
Now this afternoon, Jefferson County Sheriff's Office is looking for help finding a man who's missing and possibly in danger. 53-year-old William Robert Price was traveling to Arkansas from Ohio and hasn't been seen since he left. He was driving in a 2021 white GMC Sierra with an Ohio license plate. Anyone who has seen him or knows his whereabouts should call the Jefferson County Sheriff's Office. And happening today, an event to highlight missing persons cases in Arkansas and give law enforcement some advice for solving them. The annual Never Forgotten Arkansas Takes Action training and luncheon is happening in Benton. Arkansas Attorney General Leslie Rutledge is hosting the 11th annual event today at the Benton Event Center. It will consist of an all-day training session for law enforcement and attorneys. The House Select Committee investigating the January 6th attack on the U.S. Capitol is holding another hearing today. Today's focus is on the president's inaction during the assault, calling it dereliction of duty. Natalie Brand has more details from Capitol Hill.
During another rare primetime hearing, the House Select Committee investigating January 6th will focus on former President Trump's actions during the roughly 3-hour-long window from the start of the attack.
So go home. We love you.
To the time he told rioters to leave.
As the rioters were getting closer to the Capitol and overtaking the Capitol, what was the president's response? And why didn't he go a couple feet, 25 feet over to the press room and tell folks to leave?
CBS News has confirmed the star witnesses are expected to be former Deputy White House Press Secretary Sarah Matthews and former Deputy National Security Advisor Matthew Pottinger.
I saw the same things unfold that the American public saw. I mean, images of violence unfolding on television, and that's when I called it quits.
The committee says tonight it will dig into the conversations inside the White House during the attack, trying to show aides, allies, and family were urging the former president to act.
The fact that nothing happened and that it took so long for him to act is incredibly puzzling and distressing.
The Washington Post is reporting the committee will also play outtakes from Mr. Trump's video the day after the assault, where he finally conceded that President Biden would take office. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Capitol Hill.
Inflation here in Arkansas and around the country is now at its highest levels we've seen in over 40 years. One of the biggest impacts is on groceries. A consumer price study shows grocery prices leaped 12% over the last year. The Arkansas Grocers Association says despite those high prices, traffic in stores is also at an all-time high. However, that isn't necessarily a bump in profit for store owners.
If you're seeing consumers trade down from name brand, Green Giant, Del Monte, Pillsbury, you're seeing them trade down from those name brands down to private label brands simply because their dollar will go a little further when they buy the private label brands versus the national brands.
In the last month alone, prices for cereal and baking products rose 2%. A new survey says the supply of baby formula powder is at its lowest level in stores since the shortage began earlier this year. The FDA plans to review its own handling of the crisis, but the shortage is still affecting families now. Meg Oliver spoke to two moms who say it's harder than ever to feed their children.
I've been searching everywhere.
For Julia Morgan and her 8-month-old daughter Tatum, finding formula is a daily struggle.
How much formula do you have left right now?
About a week and a half.
Tatum is lactose intolerant and needs a hypoallergenic formula or she gets very sick.
I thought I was in the clear because I had like 2 months supplies.
In February, formula maker Abbott's largest plant shut down for possible contamination. Before the recall, Abbott was responsible for 40% of domestic baby formula. And that same month, formula manufacturers say they alerted retailers to an upcoming shortage. But in June, President Biden admitted that he didn't know about the looming problem until months later.
I became aware of this problem sometime in early April, about how intense it was.
To counter the shortage, the Biden administration launched Operation Fly Formula in May, which by the end of this week will have delivered 61 million 8-ounce equivalent bottles of formula since May.
As of today, we domestically see more baby formula being produced than we saw several months ago.
Adding to the supply problem, that same Abbott plant had to close because of flooding, which backed up production even more. It reopened July 1st, but there are still delays to store shelves.
We're going to work to make sure that they cannot allow a disruption in a plant that closes down to disrupt the availability of the supply that parents need.
But that future action would be too late for those like 8-year-old Izzy Bradford. She's a 3rd grader who suffers from a rare disorder known as PKU and relies on a special formula for about 70% of her nutrition.
In the last 2 months, I don't feel like anything has changed. I think we need to recognize this as a hunger crisis.
Meg Oliver, CBS News, New York.
The new school year is about a month away, and for the first time, all students are now able to get vaccinated against COVID-19. That's because the FDA recently approved vaccines for children 6 months old and up, but the choice to actually vaccinate younger kids is a tough one for some parents. Dr. Josh Lyon says immunizing while little is crucial.
When you look at kind of COVID across this younger population, COVID in this age specifically, this is the most at-risk age for hospitalization across all ages for children.
It's not just the COVID vaccine either. There has been a drop-off in routing immunizations as well. Educating parents about the impact of their decision is a big part of Lyon's job.
I think the hardest thing is every now and then you get a family who you have a conversation with and you think it's a good and meaningful conversation, and you know, they kind of decide that that's not what's right for their family. And rarely, but it does happen, you wind up with those kids who wind up hospitalized, or you wind up with those kids who have a secondary issue.
Dr. Lyons says getting the right information from trusted sources and having those talks is key to making the right decision for your child. Heat and drought are issues all across the country. Here in Arkansas, we're watching out for wildfires. What you need to know after the break. Nathan?
Drought continues to build across Arkansas. The latest drought monitor came out today. I'll have a look at that and talk about the potential of some downpours in parts of the state later today. Next.